that I had let go because I was a Muslim, because I didn't want to think about it. Muhammad having sexual slaves and calling that person a perfect human being. Can you do that? Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca. Mecca was a religious and economic hub in the Arabian Peninsula because he had Kaaba in it. Kaaba is a house of God, or gods as it was back then. He housed 360 gods. He allowed all different religions to come in and do their worships or their pilgrimages, any their sacred duties. That brought in a lot of business for Meccans. Meccans have established all this, they've made this economy for themselves solely based on their religion. And house the Kaaba, whoever it was controlled by, was the most influential family in Mecca. And it was a tribalistic society. It was based on the tribes of that. And the Quraysh, the tribe Quraysh, was the controller or the bearer of the keys of Kaaba. And within the tribes, there's a clan of Banu Hashim, the Hashemites. And Muhammad was born in Banu Hashim to Abdullah and Amina. Abdullah died in Muhammad's infancy. Um, and then when he was 6, his mother dies, becomes an orphan. His grandfather takes his patronage. His grandfather dies 2 years after as well. Then Abu Talib becomes the guardian of Muhammad. Abu Talib was also leader of Banu Hashim and a caravan leader. He was a merchant who would take caravans all around the Arabian lands and everything. So yeah, he trained Muhammad as a merchant. He started taking him wherever he goes. Muhammad would go him, learning the trade, learning the merchant, going around in different cultures and different cities. There are the stories about Muhammad's childhood. He's had a pretty normal childhood, but there are stories that actually try to say that there was divinity about Muhammad even before, even in his childhood, before he had claimed prophethood. Him being visited by angels to cleanse his heart of any sins he can commit. So these Muhammad's playing out in the street. Angels come to open his chest, take his heart out, and cleanse it with holy water, so he cannot commit any sins in the future. There are some stories, they are hard to, all the stories are hard to comprehend because we cannot see a child's chest being open and heart being cleansed and put back in, and the child. Other stories have clouds covering Muhammad because it was desert. There's scorching sun all around you, and a cloud covering Muhammad wherever he goes. In fact, the story of this Christian monk who'd Muhammad was on a caravan en route to Syria with Abu Talib, and this Christian monk who had a hut somewhere witnesses this cloud just covering this caravan traveling, and waits for them to make camp and goes invite them all to dinner because he wanted to see what was this cloud. Invites everybody and still doesn't figure out why was this cloud covering it. And then he asks Abu Talib, is everybody who was with you on this caravan present here, or you've left somebody behind? And Abu Talib says, oh, it's my nephew. I left my nephew behind. And then he says, okay, maybe this person who's left behind, there is something special about this person. There is something. And Halima, the Muhammad's foster mother, his camel, she was poor. Her camel was old, bad in health, wouldn't travel as fast as healthy camels would. And when Muhammad would, Halima would take Muhammad in her lap and sit on the camel. Camel would get healthy, starts traveling faster, in fact, run. So there are some Muslims No, these are stories not all Muslims believe in, of course. Where I assure you, some Muslims do believe. Barelvis in Pakistan love these stories, trying to connect Muhammad to divinity even before his prophethood. Um, so, yeah, Muslims have always tried to link Muhammad to something more than Muhammad himself, something more than just a human, because he's special. Um, that's a brief background into Muhammad. So, Makkah at the time of Muhammad was a religiously pluralistic society. For them, more religions or more gods or notions of gods meant more business. They had, as I said earlier, they had established the whole economy for themselves, a healthy economy, just on the notion of religions, just allowing anybody from any parts of the world to come in, bring their gods, they'd house their god to this sacred place, Kaaba, and then you can perform your religious duties, whatever they are. And that meant more business for them. Most of the society is happy with that because that's bringing in business, that's bringing in money. But there are some people who want religion to be a guidance for your spirituality, not your economics. So they want religion and economics to be, or not. They don't want religion to be used for economic purposes. Religion's not a shop for them. Um, some people, four of them, in fact, four friends, Warqa bin Nawfal, Zaid bin Amr, Usman bin Haritha, and one more, they decided that we should look for monotheistic God, Abrahamic God, and we should only worship that God because that's the God, that's Abraham's God, and Abraham's uh, been somebody that everybody looked up to in that time, in that area. And they wanted the religious duty and affiliation to be just towards Abraham and his God. Uh, weren't that successful because they didn't necessarily oppose all the practices that were going on, but there was this notion of monotheism that these people were trying to instill in their community. And they came to be known as Hanifs. They were also poets and soothsayers. They were really common in that time. They came to be known as the Hanifs. And Muhammad, in his childhood, was inspired by Hanifs. He he had met. There is one incident that's even the new historians, the historians in past 50 years or so, do describe in the whenever they're talking about Muhammad, is the one of this meeting, Muhammad meeting Zaid just outside Makkah. Zaid had been on this retreat, or he's living in reclusivity, and Muhammad coming across, he sees him and says, "Oh Zaid, why do I see you being hated by your kin in Mecca?" And then Zaid explaining what monotheism is, how having all these different gods doesn't help, how we should only be looking towards Abraham's God, and Muhammad taking that message to heart and trying to emulate whatever Zaid had been doing, taking religious retreats, spiritual retreats, meditation, going away in isolation and just working on your spirituality. And Muhammad had taken up that practice. He'd go to a cave on the Mount of Hira, that's not far from Mecca. He'd go there, be in isolation for days at a time, just working on his spirituality. And one time at the age of 40, when he's there, he feels a presence, and the presence reveals itself to be Gabriel, the angel. Uh, and he asked Muhammad to read, Iqra, read. And Muhammad, being scared because having another otherworldly presence in there in a small cave, he got scared, runs back home to his wife Khadija, and him trembling, and Khadija put her duvet over him and saying, "Okay, calm down, tell me what had happened." And he told that this had happened, and I believe I don't know what to make of it, but I was told to read. Um, and she said, okay. Warqa bin Nawfal, one of the original Hanif poets, was Khadija's cousin. Khadija takes Muhammad to Warqa bin Nawfal and just asking for guidance. And Warqa bin Nawfal saying, oh, I wish I was young now. And they ask him, why do you wish? And then he prophesies that it's going to be a day. I wish to be alive for the day when you are driven out of Makkah by your king, because I believe you are the prophet that was promised. That's how the story goes. And Muhammad's prophethood starts. For first couple of years, he keeps it to himself because he's scared. Because if it's one thing to trying to get everybody to monotheistic God, it's other thing saying this is the only God. What everything else you're doing is wrong. There's gonna be a backlash to that. And Muhammad is an orphan, although he's covered by his patronage of Abu Talib. He's still scared to speak out about it in public. For first 2 or 3 years, he keeps his message, his revealed message, to his closest allies. Khadija becomes the first woman to be a Muslim. Ali, still about 10 at the time, his cousin Abu Talib's son, he becomes Muslim at the age of 10. Abu Bakr, one of his closest friends, and and also a merchant, them, becomes the first man to accept his message, and then he takes on further from there. There are many events in Muhammad's prophetic life that actually reveal what kind of person or his journey as evolving as a human being, or where his life is taken. At the beginning, his message is all about inclusivity, peace, acceptance, because he's in a society where he wants to be accepted by his kin. Most of his family lives there and everything. It's completely about peace, and he's also afraid of consequences. But as he grows, as he gains numbers and momentum as a religion, as especially after people like Umar ibn Khattab started to come in Islam, his tone or his message starts changing with that time frame. From inclusivity and peace and no fight and everything, he starts to go towards fighting the enemies. And this is all, these revelations are completely clear in Quran as well, how Quran goes from Meccan Quran to Medina Quran. Because even some of the Muslim scholars, they say, well, they be branded as heretics afterwards, but they have said that Meccan Quran and Medina Quran, they seem completely two different things, because when after the Hijrah, when they've made Hijrah and Muhammad's gone in Medina, and he's got this status of being the head of these tribes in Medina, the collection of tribes that they are coming to him with every problem, and he's solving that for them. He starts to crave that bit more. He wants his message or his version of how to govern a society to be applied throughout, at least on Makkah to begin with. That's where he starts to ask for a bit of violence in his message. Starts with the Khazrajids, because Medina could only sustain all these new refugees coming in for so long. Medina was not a business society, it was a agrarian society and agriculture. And these refugees coming in from Makkah, these new Muslims coming in, they have no experience in agriculture because they lived in a business society. Now, this is to sustain themselves in an agrarian society. Muhammad starts asking his followers to raid the caravans. They're passing nearby en route to Mecca. Caravan raiding, normal practice of the time. It's fine. But the problem arose when So there are these 4 sacred months in of Islamic calendar now, but the calendar of the time, where fighting and raiding and killing and everything was forbidden. The months of Muharram, Rajab, uh, Zilqad, and Zilhajj. Zilhajj being the pilgrimage month. But there comes a time when Muhammad had asked his followers in the month of Rajab to attack a caravan, and those followers taking a step back and saying, "It's Rajab, we cannot really do that." But then Quran, there's a revelation. The Quran says it's okay for you to carry out this raid because it's coming out of necessity. I'll provide you with the reference number of the ayah. So there is that. And personally, Muhammad's personality starts to change. For first 25 years, so first 15 years before and 10 years after his prophethood, he's married to Khadija, only has one wife. After Khadija's death, and at the same time, he's gained more acknowledgement, he's gained more power by the day now. His behavior throughout everything is starting to change now. He started taking up more wives. Yes, he says, Islam says these wives were taken as political alliances or just trying to further this, but it's still a personality change. There's a massive change of being monogamous with one wife for 25 years, but then power comes and he's starting taking all these wives and starting cementing the relations with his friends as well, marrying his 2 daughters to Usman, taking Umar and Abu Bakr's daughters as his wife. And so there is one problem that arises. One is, if Muhammad is kept as a man of that time, there isn't much you can say against him, because at that time this all was happening anyways. The problem is when Muhammad's sunnah is still applicable today according to Islamic theology. That's where the problem is. That's why judging Muhammad by today's standards is a normal thing to do, because Islam says Muhammad is a perfect human being by any standards or any time. Or if you don't think Muhammad is perfect, that means your standards are wrong. But now we've developed into a society, or our human brain have developed so much that we do think child marriage is abhorrent, it's wrong. We would never do that. Many Muslims would never do that, right? But they still have to rationalize somehow, saying Muhammad's marrying a child is kind of okay. Yeah? And then even according to, there are some things that Muhammad did that didn't sit well within those society as well. One being marrying his adopted son's wife. Adopted sons in that time were treated as your own son. So much so that when Ali adopted Abu Bakr's son, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, and Ali and Aisha had a war together, Abu Bakr's son, biological son, Ali's adopted son, fought for Ali, not for his sister Aisha, because he was adopted. And that society had a problem with that. So why are you marrying your own son's wife? This isn't what we stand. It's and then there's another revelation, allowing Muhammad to marry his adopted son Zaid bin Harsa's wife at the time, Zainab, asking Zaid to divorce, and Zaid divorces, and then he marries Zainab because Quran allows him to. Quran so far goes to say it's a privilege only afforded to you, to Muhammad and Muhammad alone. And then taking a 5th wife, because it didn't sit well with, at least with the Muslims of the time, because all the Muslim men are told you're only allowed 4 wives, right? And Muhammad is taking up more than 4 wives. And now they are complaining, saying, why are you, I thought Islam said we are all same, you're chosen from us. Why are you doing this? Again, Quran allows Muhammad to take as many wives as he wants. And again, the sentence is used, it's a privilege only for you, for Muhammad. So we see there are elements that even for that time's moral code or communal ethics, it was seen as it's going too far. But Muhammad always justified it with Quran or with his supposed divinity, because he's the last chosen prophet of God. And then there are aspects that don't sit with us by today's standard, but they were okay in that time. But if we see Muhammad as today, if his sunnah and his hadith and everything he did is still considered perfect today, we have to call that out as well. Him also doing, partaking in the slavery trade, buying slaves, selling slaves, or accepting people, or women especially, as gifts from different governors and kings around the world that were present, and then having sexual relations with those slaves because they are something or somebody that his right hand possesses, and the Quran allows him to do as well. Quran claims to be infallible, and Muslims believe that, and whatever is coming for Quran, they would take on their faith and everything. But Hadith is something that even Muslims can question, and is something that I'd urge every Muslim to question, because Hadith is a source of knowledge that cannot be relied upon. Why? Because two of the biggest narrators of Hadith are Abu Huraira and Aisha. Aisha, we know, was 9 years old when Muhammad had started having sexual relations with her. But we know what's that called when a 54-year-old have sexual relations with a 9-year-old. And that would have a massive impact on Aisha's psychology. The most powerful man of the time is having a sexual relation with this child, and this child is growing up trying to rationalize everything that's going on around her, and that impact on her psychology would be massive. And whatever she's saying after that, she's just trying to rationalize it, just trying to think better of herself. And there's psychological aspect to it, that is just Aisha. And the second is Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira was a really questionable character. Abu Huraira became Muslim after the conquering of Taif, no, Khaybar, sorry. When Khaybar is conquered, after that, so maybe 3 years maximum before Muhammad's died. So Abu Huraira had been a Sahabi for 3 years with a questionable character. Umar didn't like Abu Huraira at all. Umar tried to hold him accountable for many things. Him making money off. I know it's very Shia thing to say because Shias don't like Abu Huraira. But even Umar didn't like Abu Huraira. You can find these narrations where Umar is asking Abu Huraira to be accountable for the things he's saying, or even him calling himself to be friend of Muhammad. And Umar would call him out, "You're not friends of Muhammad. You've only been Muslim for 2.5 years before he dies." And then when he becomes a governor of Bahrain, in actually under Umar's Khilafah as well, him spending, and then Umar saying, "I will lash your back out. I'll whip your back." And Umar actually did whip Abu Huraira because he'd used his powers of narrations for his own personal gain and make money off it. These two. Second, hadiths are polluted with unauthentic narrations. Bukhari spent 16 years of his life going through more than 600,000 narrations at the time and only classifying 7,400 of them to be authentic. That's 1%. 99% Bukhari thought at the time were unauthentic, just pollution coming through, people using religion as they have done through ages for their own personal, political, or economic gains. And what's to say even that 1%, Bukhari have only kept them because they sit well with his own personal philosophy. If Bukhari had different religion or sectarian affiliation, his Sahih hadiths would have been different. That's just how it is, right? Because he doesn't have any God-given power, so to say, to class those narrations authentic. Why is everybody's believing that? There is no claim of infallibility on them. And sheer pollution of how many bad hadiths were there. And even when Bukhari classes some of these hadiths authentic, they're still contradicting each other. There are hadiths in Bukhari, authentic hadiths that say Muhammad lived for 10 years in Mecca and 10 years in Medina. For the totality, that makes him a 60 years old man. Then in the same book, it says he lived 10 years in Mecca, 13 years in Mecca in total, and 10 years in Medina. What to choose from? Well, so hadith as a collection or as a source of knowledge cannot be relied upon. Then there is the problems with the chain of narration, the asnad. The first collection of hadiths is written down 185 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad. So that's oral narration going on for 200 years and then getting written down. And even then, when it's written down, any king in power can change it because victors get to write the history. It's as simple as that. And hadith is something that, yeah, I think every Muslim need to look at hadiths objectively and say most of them, there is no way you can attribute everything that's being said in these siyasatta, all the authentic hadiths back to Muhammad. First of all, Quran is not a scientific book, and even postmodern Muslim scholars have started saying that as well. Yasir Qadhi has said, let's keep Quran as a spiritual guidance or religious guidance, leave science to scientific method and scientists, because sciences need to be scrutinized and then made into facts or laws, and we cannot do that with Quran. As simple as that. It doesn't sit on the basic scientific principle of infallibility, of scrutinizing it, because it claims to be the absolute truth. And whatever so-called scientific miracles, which like Zakir Naik would give a 3 hours lecture on, most of them are basic knowledge of the time in different areas of the world, yes, but these things were known to people. Oh, that's what they believed in. And I guess the better way of looking into it is, rather than trying to link Quran to any scientific theory or law or anything, discovery, just look at Quran and try and find something scientific from it, completely disconnecting from science. You cannot. You need science, and then you make the link. So science, Quran has never driven science. It's always Muslims who try to link what's in Quran to science. And one of the best way to look into it is astronomically, Quran makes mistakes. Whatever, sun setting in the muddy water, or stars being lamps, or biologically Genesis story. Quran retains the Genesis story of the Bible coming in. All of these go directly against all the scientific theories and laws established. If basics aren't scientific, how can this be a scientific book? And Muhammad is just Muhammad, yes, he traveled a lot. He went to different parts of he went to Syria, we know, he went to all other parts of Arabia. He's learned from everybody. We see he was a keen learner. There is no doubt in that. He was learning from Hanifs when he was 14. He was trying to work on himself, on his spirituality. He was doing that. Yes, power corrupts a person. He did Muhammad as well. But I don't I don't find any claims from early Islam, from Islam to be a scientific force. It didn't. Islam inspired some Muslims to look into things and discover things. Sure, and any theology or any philosophy would. But even these people, Al-Biruni, Al-Kundi, all of these discoverers and inventors, they never attributed their success or their inventions to their religion, because they kept their religion and their profession or their profession separate. It's very new thing that we see. We are discovering new things, and with every new discovery or every new theory, any thinking Muslims would try to justify what they have believed in throughout their childhood. I certainly did. I needed to make sense of evolution. That set right against my religion, right? Because Genesis and evolution are worlds apart. But then you'd look into some other things that you can satisfy yourself, because science is something that can bring us closest to the reality of things. Science is something that can bring us as close as we can be to reality and truth. And when you see that going against your religion, you need to make a link between the two to make yourself feel better. And that's where you start just hanging on to straws, whatever you can find. And it can be a long shot. There were people who were trying to say that 9/11 was prophesied in Quran, because Quran says 2 birds would fly onto this tower. A religious mind, because every person would think there are absurdities, right? Without vocalizing it, because it's hard to rationalize religion, especially in this world where there is so much information available, where you can see what other lifestyles or other people are believing in, and then you start seeing shortcomings in your own one. You need something to make you feel better within your religion. And that's where in the modern Muslims tried to link their religion to science, whereas Muhammad had only said the things that were actually other people were saying, even thousands of years before him. A bit of both, really. So when he started out, I do agree with Abdullah Gonda's assessment, because first of all, he's got the educational background into looking into it. I do agree that he did had some sort of schizophrenia, because all of the symptoms are there on earlier revelations, at least, because he'd get some sort of fit. His body would start shaking, and even him losing consciousness for a while. That would happen in the earlier revelations. That does tell us that he did have something, that he was hearing voices and then he'd lose consciousness. That does give us indication he might have been schizophrenia, or there might have been some sort of mental anomaly there. That's how it started, right? But there is a point somewhere when Muhammad had realized these people are believing whatever I'm telling them. I've got enough control over them, and they have started believing, and now I can tell them whatever I like. Because some of these later revelations, you see, he's sitting in group of people and ask them to hold on a minute, I'm getting revelation, Jibreel is here. That's completely different. That's the time he had, that's just my assessment of it. That's the time he realized, okay, these people are starting to believe me in whatever I'm saying. Now I can get away with anything. Now his revelations are a lot easier, because he's just sitting there and Jibreel is coming. He's with Aisha and Jibreel is coming. And Jibrail's even gossiping with him about Aisha and Hafsa because he had slept with a slave and they're not happy with that. So, and he's trying to bring in Jibrail to actually have a better relations with his wife, or his wives to submit to him completely. So he have started using everything for his personal, political, and gaining power. I don't know where that happens exactly, where he's starting to, where his revelation are just revelations. He's no longer getting these epileptic fits before them. But there is this shift in between these two. Because the inconvenience of revelations, that shows now he's starting to use these revelations, this Quranic text, to his own gain. Because there's this incident where it's so Quran asked men to devote everything equally amongst his wives, right? And that's applied to Muhammad as well. That means all 11 or so wives he has at the time, he has to give them one night each, because all resources include your time. At Hafsa's night, Hafsa had some familial commitments. She can't be there. She goes to attend to that. Her family matter. And Muhammad, instead of giving the night to Hafsa, sleeps with Mary, a slave. Hafsa comes back. She's not happy with that. She told Aisha about the incident, that it was my night and slept. And now Aisha's not happy about it. And then Jibrail comes, of course, to Muhammad, and Muhammad says, okay, you've shared this, that was for you, information about Muhammad to one of the others' wives. It's something that Allah dislikes. Muhammad is so angry that he lives only with Mary for a month after that. He doesn't go to any of the wives, which is again an un-Islamic notion at the time. But Quran gives him power there as well, that he can postpone anybody at his will, any of his wives at his wills. That's in Quran as well. And when he gets tired of it eventually, because he knows they're no budging in, another verse comes to him that's telling him, who are you to make somebody we've made halal for you haram for yourself? Meaning, who are you to not go back to your wives? Because now he's had a month with this slave, he wants to go back to the wives. Again, that revelation is coming, saying, I'm nobody to make somebody that's halal for me haram on me. So we see at first, yes, these revelations are coming like with the symptoms of schizophrenia, even epilepsy, and hearing voices, everything, right? But then after a period when he's got a bit of power, he knows whatever he says is taken as word of God now. He can get away with it, and he does make that choice somewhere. Or maybe it's just a natural progression, because he's getting power, he's getting acknowledgement, he's getting submissiveness from everybody around him. He can now do whatever he likes. After 1400s of Islam's systematic indoctrination, it's really hard for Muslims of today to look into Muhammad as just a man. But if we look at the society Muhammad was living in, claiming prophethood, claiming to be the bearer of revelation from God, claiming to be a prophet, or bringing in their own form of written text from God, was nothing revolutionary. It was happening all around. There were many people who were claiming that. Muhammad is just successful in that. And we have to give him credit for that. His revelation was successful. And for Muslims today, I guess there is a choice that needs to be made. The choice is what we have achieved as a society today. is that good enough of reasons, be it secularism, liberalism, or common sense, human common sense, because we have evolved. Does Muhammad sit well with all those bases? Judge Muhammad and see if he is a good human being or not. Just go through his journey and see what drove him to be the way he actually was. What made Muhammad? And with Muhammad's revolution, there were many who were reaping rewards because they were associated with Muhammad. And there was a lot of, yeah, I guess it just, I just want people to actually look into it objectively and come to their own conclusion. Don't be influenced by anything. Read Islamic. I love reading Rahiqul Makhtoom, the sealed nectar, because I read that as a Muslim. Now I've read it as an ex-Muslim, and there's so much in Rahiqul Makhtoom that I had let go because I was a Muslim, because I didn't want to think about it. Muhammad having sexual slaves and calling that person a perfect human being. Can you do that? I guess I'd appeal to everybody's common sense, really, then, because theologically, I know how hard it is to look into Muhammad as just a human being, because it's Muhammad, it's somebody. If you say the word Muhammad, if the first words out of your mouth as a human being, as a child, is Muhammad, your parents are going to be more happy than you calling them mother or father. It's to that level. You're born in your ears, you're told you're a Muslim. You're told Muhammad is your prophet. Right throughout your childhood, you're told Muhammad is perfect. It's not easy to question that. And I get that. Completely. I've been through it. I know how hard it is. But once you do, it's life-changing. You start to look into everything objectively because you've done the hardest thing you can, the hardest topic that you can look into objectively. Just see Muhammad as a man of that society and see Muhammad as a man of today. And that's the best I can do there, really.